Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organizations. Each and every episode, we sit down with experts from various fields from around the world, just like you're grabbing a coffee with them, to dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So go grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. How do you get people to understand your message, especially maybe when it's kind of deeply technical, complex, or just plain overwhelming? Maybe you've shared a pitch, a product, a project, and I know I've been in the room. You kind of met with those confused eyes, or you're trying to explain something to someone and you have to keep saying, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Just because you know it's not getting through. Well, if you can relate, which you probably have been there, this episode is for you. I'm so excited about our guest today. I have been following along with his journey. He's got an incredible book, Be a Nerd That Talks Good. I just getting it in the mail, reading it was so fantastic. Joel Benge is the founder of Message Specs, author of this incredible book, self-described nerd who talks good. He's helped leaders from NASA to Nickelodeon, government, cybersecurity, dozens of startup communicators. He just helps leaders communicate clearly and effectively. I can't wait for this episode. Joel, thank you so much for being on the Speak with People podcast.
Jason, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for this.
This is just awesome. And it was great having some conversation right off air before we hit record. But before we hop into this conversation, because I'm in rooms with leaders all the time, and I've heard this so often from leaders. And so I love that we're having this conversation today. Give us a little bit into your story, just how you got to this place, what led you up to here, what kind of, you know, burning discontent inside of you that kind of birthed this vision to help leaders this way.
Oh, burning discontent. I love that as an opener. And yeah, so I got my start in theater education and video games. I was a theater kid. I was gonna be an actor. I got to college and I'm like, I don't know, these classes thing, waking up is, learning about all this stuff. That's not the theater. I said, I want to do something more. And so I became an IT guy. I went, did a complete 180. I went from a help desk at a video game company to a help desk at NASA. I said, I don't want to fix people's problems anymore. I want to create the computers that create the problems. And so then I ended up just doing all the nerdy stuff and found my way through cybersecurity and compliance and policy. And I applied for a position in the federal government as a compliance analyst. And they looked at my background and they said, theater, education, video games, you worked for Nickelodeon. You were I was one of the first podcasters in the early 2000s, back when we were doing
Huh.
everything manually. And, if you got 100 listeners, it was a good week. And they said, do you want to be a communications manager? And I said, what's the difference? And they said, well, compliance lives in Excel and communications lives in Microsoft Word. And I said, well, at this point, I'm a theater school dropout. I do word stuff real good. So I became the principal cybersecurity communication manager at the Department of Homeland Security headquarters. And that was 6.5 years of managing all the complex communications across the department, the various components, writing the executive secretariat memo summaries and the stuff up to Congress, and writing the change your password as frequently as you change your underwear emails. So a lot of communications,
Wow.
I learned a lot. And then I had an opportunity to join a startup. Same guy who hired me at Homeland Security, finished his PhD thesis, scraped together a little bit of money, started a cyber startup. And he goes, man, we're having lunch one day. He goes, man, I can't explain the product and what we do. And, I said, well, explain it to me. And he said, well, it's a self-defending artificial intelligence multinodal network using the behavior of eusocial insects. What? He said, "It's an ant swarm, algorithm that tells you where you're gonna be hacked next." And I'm like, "Okay, we've gotta find a middle ground here. Who are you trying to explain this to? Like, cybersecurity people? Is this like a tool for, like, the SOC analysts?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "I'm going right to the top. I'm selling it to CEOs, chief risk officers, and boards of directors." And I said, "Well, not with that pitch, you're not." So I came on board, um and very quickly we pivoted the messaging. We did all the things that you're not supposed to do, dumbed it down, made really uh stupid metaphors and things, abandoned the ant stuff eventually because it was just way too complicated, because you actually had to do a biology lesson before you could actually get to the value of the product. um and I invented a card game with the help of my son, to explain his thesis in 40 seconds, so we could get that out of the way and just get to the value proposition. And that was a success. The software wasn't, because we were ahead of the curve. So when the company folded, I found myself at a marketing agency or a creative agency here in DC. Our primary customers were the Defense Department, the intelligence community, and cybersecurity companies and
Wow.
startups. So all the nerds that I had been hanging out with, I'm now on the outside trying to help them build their brands, build their messaging, rewrite their websites. And I realized that most marketing companies, um, don't really service very highly technical stories very well. It's not their fault. They do amazing work, but most of the time it's because the companies haven't done their self work and their homework. So I created another card game, which is the message deck, and it's part of my workshop that I take clients through, and that has spun off. My own podcast, the book. I'm doing workshops, and it's really a way of the smart people self-discovering how to communicate so that they can get their thoughts out of their head onto the table, look at them dispassionately, and then move forward, hand really good messaging guidance off to their marketing partners or their creative partners. So it's been a journey. I didn't promise it would be a short one, but there I am.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. I love so part of your workshop then do the cards, do they have a scenario and then they have to play it out? How what I'm just so curious, what they do with those.
Yeah, not to do a full workshop here, but I'm happy to. There are three human organs that we communicate and make decisions with: the heart, the head, and the gut. This is a cheeseburger because if I'd have put a stomach on there, it just would have been weird. And so the first thing you do is you help people realize that they're coming from this point. They need to get people's attention, and they also need to build credibility. And so if you're only focused in the middle, which most tech companies do, you're not really standing out, right? So then, not to rip off. So that's Aristotle. Not to
Sure.
rip off one great master, I ripped off Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'll check my autofocus here. Boop, there we go. Um, so there are six different types of messages that people need to be prepared for. Most people stuck down here in technical messages. I want to get them thinking about big ideas and stories and whatnot. So instead of asking them, "What's your big idea?" and they say, "We're a cloud-based identity access management solution." And I'm like, "Why would somebody want you?" And they say, "Oh, because you've got identities in the cloud and you need to manage their access." And I'm like, "All you've done is flip your Gartner category around. Like, you haven't told me anything that I don't know." I say, "What is something you want to change about your industry?" And all of a sudden their eyes light up and they go, "Do you know why we do the things we do? Because we believe." And the moment somebody says "we believe,"
Mm.
it's a big idea. It's not technical, it's emotional, it's
Yep.
it's it's who they are. And those are the stories that you can build a brand on, that you can stand out. So the process is really to take people through a bunch of prompts. I've got workshop exercises. It's great for team alignment because you get an entire team in a room, not talking and arguing back and forth,
Yep.
just literally dumping their thoughts onto the table. And then when we take a step back and analyze it, things come out of that mess that we never thought we had seen before, they never talked about before. And I'll say, "Wow, you guys, there's a something here that I don't see on your website, I don't see in your pitches, I don't see in your communications, but there's a real core of, we look out for the underdog." We're not a
Yep.
managed service provider. We're looking out for mom and pop shops that can't defend themselves, and we do it easily. Okay, that's a value. It's an intangible value, but if you just say we're a managed service provider and we'll protect your computers, well, then you're competing about against every other managed service provider. So I found this has been an incredible resource, and and it's like playing a game. Working with me is fun. It's not what Hogwarts house are you? What are you a linebacker or a tight end? It's like we really get down to brass tacks quickly.
Wow. Wow. Oh man, so many off ramps popping up in my head, but you know,
Derailed all your questions. I know I tend to do that, so
I know I love it. It's just fantastic. One of my first jobs out of college, I worked. I lived in the Detroit area. Everything was about for GM, Chrysler, and then all of the places that help prop those up. But I worked for a smaller auto company, and I worked in the print room where I had to print at that time. I mean, this is 94 somewhere five, the 10 to 15-foot long blueprints, and we'd print
mm.
them on this ammonia based machine. It was just wild. But when I wasn't printing, I also had to do IT. And the only training I got from the lead IT person was, if somebody calls, just tell them to restart their computer. Like that's all you got to do.
Yep.
I was like, all right, that's just it. I love it. I love it. And I do have to say, 250, let's see, your episode will be 276. You are the first guest on the Speak with People podcast to have multiple camera setup.
What can I say? I'm a theater school dropout. I mean,
I
it's like it's all about being on stage, right? I mean,
I love
and
it.
that's what speaking is.
Absolutely.
Speaking is performance, and so you've always got to show up with your best, and you got to be prepared.
Absolutely. I love it. It's yeah, I mean, we're like how many minutes in? I'm already so inspired. So this is awesome. So speak to our kind of our technically brilliant leaders who are listening to the podcast, because you and I were in rooms with them all the time. Get where they're coming from. They know all of this depth and everything that has to happen. But maybe when they're speaking with one on one in a small team or in front of them, they're they're just struggling to connect to put things in as simple terms for the non-technical audience. Why do you think there's that breakdown that just kind of happens when they're so brilliant on one end, but then it just sort of stops at the how do we make it for the everyday person to understand?
You know, I really believe that it's because smart people know they're smart and they value knowledge and
Mm,
they want to share. And it's that motivation. I want to tell you everything I know. And that's laudable. But the challenge with that is you're speaking to another human. They have got limited brain capacity. I talk about in the book the caveman mind or the caveman brain,
mhm,
right? And we're in a world where we're dealing with so many complexities that our meat case was not built for. Our brain was not built to take in as much of this information. The neocortex, which is what controls language, which is what controls the higher reasoning, that's very relatively new in our evolution. And there are three other parts of the brain that go deeper and deeper and deeper that are just managing emotions. They're managing it's information but not data. So
mhm,
you're constantly scanning around, you're constantly looking for um, what can I eat, what should I run from, what can I procreate with. I mean, these are still in inbuilt drives, and if you're only appealing to the neocortex and you're not respecting how overloaded the caveman brain can be, you can literally see, and once you're aware of it, you should keep an eye out for when lights turn off
mm,
behind their eyes because you've overloaded them.
mhm,
I do a simulation at the beginning of my workshops where I'm like, okay, we're here to talk about messaging, and then I throw up this big gigantic chart of brand and marketing architecture, and I start talking very monotonously, and it's like the second slide of my typical talk, and then I stop and I throw up a picture of this guy yawning in an audience, and I'm like, I know this is what you look like, because I've purposely given you a bunch of information that's not relevant to you,
Yep.
because I wanted to temporarily overload your caveman brain so that you would feel what it's like. And once you're aware of that, you have to sort of balance out how you drip out information. If you can make somebody want to learn more, they will. And
Wow.
so if you give them a reason, again, triggering the heart, using a story, giving them an allegory or something like that. I mean, metaphors and allegories are great in tech, because it makes an abstract concept a little bit more real to our lived experience. I mean, if you think about it, with technology and especially IT stuff, none of it's real.
Mm.
None of it exists. So we have to bring it back to something that people will recognize as something that in their life that they exist, and they go, I get it. That's interesting to me. Tell me more. And when they're leaning forward as opposed to leaning back, then you can give them a little bit more information. But you have to be aware
Yeah.
of them and as they're receiving, and that's just classic communications. Um, I did eventually finish my degree in communications theory, and that was like one of the things that I pulled away was that delivery receipt, and I think everybody's focused on delivery and not enough on the receiving end.
Oh, wow. Wow. Goodness. Yeah, absolutely. So profound. I think sometimes as I've coached leaders who want to be more effective public speakers, so much of the journey where we convince ourselves, we make it so much about ourselves and the delivery instead of being so focused on, are we helping our audience? Do we know who our audience is? Do we know what they're gonna? It's amazing at how much even doing that will take away from some leaders who have the fear of speaking in front of people. Some leaders who get wrapped up in some of these other things. When we just turn it around and go, wait a minute, that's right. It doesn't revolve around me. How can I provide? And it almost relaxes us to a sense that we're like, okay, now I can it's kind of off me. Now I got to just make sure that I'm providing stuff that will,
Yeah.
greatly help them. Is powerful. And you talked about, stories. I mean, that's how we communicated forever was with stories. We passed stories on from generation to generation. I am so interested though to pick your brain about you talked about it, you referenced it. We receive, so much communication now every single day. At what point, will our brains in the next 5, 10, 15 years get to a place where A, we'll be able to, AI will just know what we're thinking, or B, will our brains just go, okay, we're done. Like we can't, this is too much. Like you gotta slow the roll here.
I think we're going to hit a biological bottleneck. I mean, I
Mm,
really think I think we're there. I mean, eh, you know, I'm in my late 40s now, and I don't have the capacity that I had, and I look at my 15-year-old son, and I am like, how are you constantly taking this stuff in? Maybe it's the neurodivergent ADHD. They're saying that these newer generations process differently. Maybe that is a little bit of evolution, but I think eventually the computers and the information that's coming in will outpace what we can process. And part of that caveman brain is calorie restriction
mhm.
and what's the word? You might cut this bit out. Calorie conservation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's calorie conservation, because the easier it is to make a decision, the more committed you are to that decision.
Mm.
And if something is too hard to make a decision, you might not make that decision. So that's a lot of respecting the caveman brain, is just understanding that you're presenting fresh. Maybe if you're presenting to a board member or even on stage, right? You've had your time to sit in the car and you've relaxed and you've gotten your brain ready and you maybe rehearsed and you've done your mantras or whatever. But that person that you're speaking to probably just rolled out of another session at that conference, another meeting. They're probably ticking through mental checklists in their brain as you're presenting, right?
Yep.
So they're I don't believe in multitasking. It's rapid task switching.
Oh,
So understanding that there's a lot of processing that's happening that's not dedicated to you. You're not the most important thing always. You got to make yourself the most important thing, capture their attention. So, and yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep harping on the caveman brain because there's so much more to it, but that's a big piece of it.
oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you hit on something so powerful there with, these younger brains. We have an 11-year-old. Uh, he's our youngest. We adopted him. He is on the spectrum, has a bunch of sensory difficulties, neurodivergent stuff. But the way that he locks in with his iPad, it's like nothing I've ever seen. I mean,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. We were on a vacation once, and his iPad died. And this probably 4 years ago, when he was like, he was probably at that point maybe upwards of 70% nonverbal in communication.
Hmm.
Now he's probably, 30% nonverbal. He's grown, he's doing amazing things, but his iPad died, and it was one of the first times we saw such deep emotion out of him, because he's like, my friend, this was like
That's his
his
world.
friend. Yeah. So it's so interesting. You talk about your 15-year-old, my 22-year-old. If I don't respond back to a text within seconds, he's on me with exclamation point, and I need an answer. I'm like,
But try calling him on the phone
right,
and he'll ghost you. And
right.
that's just a change in
Yeah.
our communication preferences. I mean, I'm Gen X.
Yeah.
And I feel the millennials. I don't wanna talk on the phone. I wanna do things very, very quickly. I feel like
Yep.
I'm a young Gen Xer. I'm on the younger end of that, but it's like this is the way we're changing how we communicate, and there's a lot
Mhm.
of people, a lot of business leaders, that don't recognize that, which is not to say that we wanna pitch everything away. I think
Sure.
business communication negotiations are still best done in person because a lot of negotiation is subconscious. It's a lot of mannerisms. You lose a lot by email, you lose a lot by text. But so much of the upfront stuff can be taken care of. And this is where I think AI will help us.
Mhm.
I think AI, I've recently started using Notion's mail to filter my Gmail account, and it's starting to learn certain patterns in my emails so that the important stuff bubbles up to the top, the stuff that needs attention right up at the top. It's categorizing for me. And with my brain, I couldn't do that. So
Mhm.
I'm able to offload a little bit of cognitive load. And I think that's what it is. I don't think it's attention. I think it's cognitive load. That's really the problem.
Wow. Boy, that's fantastic. You hit on something too, definitely in the book, but then even now, I think sometimes leaders, and maybe they're, the technical mind or not. It's like we see a lot of struggle with just communicating the big idea.
Hmm.
Someone asks them, or in a meeting, or one on one, or whatever setting it is, tell me about this, and then they start to talk, and they haven't processed just that big idea of it, so they go round and up and down and over here, and 20 minutes later, it's like, does that make sense? No,
Yeah.
no.
And
No.
there's so many things like that that take the preparation and the rehearsal.
Mm,
Even eliminating does that make sense as a because that I mean, as we know, puts the other person on the defensive immediately. Um, so it's like, is there anything else that I can explain about that? Or,
right.
what would you like me to dig into? Gives them options as opposed to, does that make sense? And it kind of puts them on the back foot. But a lot of what I do, I call what I do kind of tongue in cheek message therapy.
Mm,
Not massage therapy, it's message therapy. But it's because it's self-work. It's knowing when you walk into that door, having a playbook or a toolbox of messaging elements at your hand that you're practiced at, that you know you can put in front of them as a situation changes, as you see the lights flicker off in their eye and you need to sweeten it up a little bit with a story, or so the cards really lead to building out a large, well, I call it a messaging system, but it's a, it's a platform, it's a database, because nerds love systems. And I find that that works really well for the analytical mind, because you know everything you want to say. It's like the
Hmm.
Cheesecake Factory menu, right? It's like, oh, I've everything I could potentially want, but right now I'm feeling what are the Philly cheesesteak egg rolls? I'm feeling that's what I need for this. Do they still have those anymore? I hope they do. Um, this is what I need for this conversation. That person, that gal needs to hear Philly cheesesteak egg rolls. This person down here, they just want turkey sandwich. And
Hmm.
if you're in tune with them and you have all the options in front of you, it becomes a lot easier to communicate. But it's not about chasing messages, chasing audiences. Oh, here I say this to one person, over here I say this to another person, because that can also confuse the marketplace.
Right.
So I had a client. I had to write this down on a sticky note because I keep forgetting it. I had one client where I looked at all of their different website. I looked at all of their, they gave me some email samples. I looked at some pitch decks and some presentations. And across all of their content, they had one mission statement, one vision statement, one purpose, one cultural hallmark, five cultural values, four business principles, and one pledge to customers that had six paragraphs underneath it. And I said, it's no wonder the marketplace doesn't know what you do, because you have to have one big idea, one north star. Everything else can red thread to that. And there's
Yep.
a phenomenal book by Tamsin Webster called Find Your Red Thread. She just released another book called Say What They Can't Hear. She's phenomenal on helping you. I am too, but I just happen to love Tamsin. Um, Figuring out, like, what is the thing that permeates all of your messaging, and everything should point to that. And if you haven't done that work, then you really don't know what you're about. You've just built a thing.
Wow. That wow. That's so profound, and it speaks to one of the things I find myself as I'm doing workshops. I'll challenge the listeners, especially as when it comes to knowing how to tell your story, or even in the networking moments where you have the 30 seconds and they're like, okay, tell the people around you what you do, all that kind of stuff. And so many leaders just are okay with, hi, I'm Jason and I'm a speaker. And then
Hmm.
that's what they leave it at. Or they bumble through something. I'm a neurospace engineer, analyst too, none of it, but they haven't done the hard work, what you just talked about, with getting so succinct, so clear that when you introduce yourself, you're able to disrupt someone's brain to remembering you, because it's not just the normal, hi, I'm Jason, I'm a speaker.
Yeah,
And so,
and I really feel that elevator pitches are dead. I'm
mm,
on the record as being against elevator pitches, and I have a lot of people come to me say, "Help me with my elevator pitch." I said, first of all, I want you to think about that metaphor. I'm going to lock you in a metal box for 35 seconds until I read these five bullets. And I hope to God one of these bullets is something you need to hear,
yep,
and you give me money afterwards, or you whatever afterwards. And
right.
it's agenda based. And so, again, going back to stories, going back to how we communicate, for millennia, it's a person to person. And so I much prefer the metaphor of a cocktail party introduction.
Mm.
you know hey, I'm Joel, I'm a nerd that talks good, I help other nerds do the same. And they're like, what is that, tell me more.
Yeah.
you know and then it's like, well, it's messaging and marketing consulting, but I like to help really smart companies. And then you have, because when they say tell me more, that's your that okay, you can feed them just a little bit more. But if you're just like, here are my bullets, these are my credentials, I built a thing and it does a thing,
Yep.
go away.
Yep.
It's not come here, it's go away.
Yep. And with that type of framework, or you know just doing the hard work behind it, I talk to a lot of maybe more introverted leaders who are like, I hate it, I hate those rooms. And I'm probably a recovering extrovert, I'll be 50 in a couple months, 20s and 30s. I walked into big rooms and I'm like, I'm here, let's meet people. In my 40s,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to. And I feel bad because I'm like, I know I should, but with that framework to be able to have, that's maybe so not so elevator pitchy, it just gives you a little bit more confidence because you're like, okay, I know what I'm going to say and I
Yeah.
already have that ready, so it's like, okay, I can kind of walk into, being ready to be able
And
to
it
do that.
but it also can't come off as prepared in lines. And as a theater person, as an actor, um, I maybe I didn't succeed as an actor because I didn't want to deliver lines. I
Mm,
wanted to deliver the essence of a line and to be able to bend it and flex it.
yep.
And on stage you can kind of do that. If you're doing something, if it's like Shakespeare, you've got to stick to the meter and all that type of stuff. But
Yeah.
I very much like, if I understand the character and I know what I want to say and I understand the motivation, then I should be able to say the same thing eight, six different ways.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the lines that a lot of the stories and the anecdotes and the things that I've told you today are in my messaging system. They're
Hmm.
things that I came prepared with, but I say them more organically, and I keep an ear out for responses. It's great in happy hours and things like that because you get to try material. It's like a
Hmm.
comedian. Maybe if I say it this way, maybe if I deliver that line instead of that, maybe if I say change your socks instead of change your underwear, or it's like whatever, what works better. And
Yeah.
when you know that, then you can say, all right, I've got 4 or 5 different ways that I can get this thought across. And so I talk about the heart, head, and gut. I talk about get noticed, get remembered, and get results. Talk about stand out, um, make people lean in, and convert clients. That's 3 ways of saying the same 3 things.
Yep. Wow. Wow. You also talk about kind of oversharing, underselling. How does that kind of show up in our business communication?
I think the oversharing, we kind of talked about that. That's the inclination to
Mm.
deliver everything, to sell by white paper, right?
Yes.
Which is kind of like, and that was very early on with my startup. It was like, how do you enter a room? He said, well, I bring copies of my thesis. I'm like, it's oversharing and it's underwhelming, right? Because they don't want to read that. So it's that tendency to want to deliver all the goods, to
Hmm.
show all of your work. You
Yeah.
don't always have to show all of your work. You want to show the results of your work. But sometimes showing just the results of your work can be underwhelming, right? It can be, if you're not tying, and therefore we reduced your workload by 47%. I mean, that sounds cool. If I'm an analytical person, if I'm a CFO,
Yeah.
reduce my workload by 47%. That's great. But you can take that same. It's related to one of the cards in the deck, which is down in the proof point level, which is there's metrics, but then there's outcomes. So you can say, I can reduce your workload by 47%, or you dig up a client for which you did that for. You get a testimonial that says, I no longer have to double staff my shifts.
Mm.
If you think about it, it's the exact same proof point.
Yeah.
The math is the math either way. One is compelling and emotional. One is speaking to a business leader that understands the stress of double shifting, trying to maintain all of the schedules, the pay. If you're just like 47% reduction in workforce, or hey, we're going to make life so much easier on you,
Yeah.
it's the same thing, but one of them we want more.
Yeah.
We tend to want more, um, when it's emotional.
Yes. So let's dive into the emotional part for a second then. So if we're not somebody who, you hear some people speak and you're a former theater kid. I've been a public speaker forever. I can tell a story about my best friend's mom who vacuumed up their bird and have everybody laughing and I'm gonna use voice inflection and all that. But
Yep.
not everybody has that, and so what are some helpful tips, tricks, hints you give people who are like, I don't possess any emotion. So what do I do?
You know what? I think coming straight out with that,
Mm,
I'm a big fan of coming to something from a place of vulnerability. Coming from a place of vulnerability does not mean coming from a place of weakness. I want to make that very clear.
yeah.
So if you're like, look, like right off the bat, um, if I'm putting you to sleep, let me know because I tend to overshare and I want to
Yeah.
get to the good. So if I've given you enough of the data,
So good.
please tell. And I think coming from that position, it shows self awareness. It shows that you're respecting someone's time. When you've heard enough, and then respect that. The other thing is maybe communication is not the place for you. Maybe you
Mm,
need a partner. Maybe you
yeah.
need a co-founder or a PR person to help you. So a good example of this was the guy who hired me at the startup was it was and is still a really great friend, um, Dr. Earl Crane. Very smart guy. He hired me to be the crazy get attention guy. I mean, I am the guy that if I walk into a meeting and I'm like, look, I'm going to play devil's advocate with you for a moment. I'm going to put on devil glasses. It's disarming. I've got that personality. I used to wear when we would go to these conferences these really bright jackets, bright yellow, not the crazy ones, but just something that caught the attention. Royal blue, and we worked a lot in government. Royal blue instead of navy blue, right? Just to stand out. And one day he asked me, he goes, "Hey, do you think I should start upping my dress? Should I wear crazy socks? Should I was a bow tie guy. Should I wear bow ties and stuff?" I said, "No." I said, "With due respect, that's not you.
Mm,
I'm the peacock. I'm the guy. They see me and they're like, "What is going on over at that booth?" And they come over to me and I razzle dazzle them, and then I hand them off to the person that can really deliver the goods. And if you are the person that can really deliver the goods, that's amazing because we need those people. So it's just recognizing, maybe you need a partner, maybe you need someone else to soften them up. And the way we're doing things digitally now, there's a lot of digital content out there. You can rely on a creative agency, you can rely on a marketing person to deliver a lot of the upfront stuff and then position you as the straight person in the comedy duo group. But you have to do the self work. You have to equip your creative partner or your marketing partner with enough insight into your inside story so that when they do that handoff, you're not presenting something different. You're the line from the emotion doesn't get broken.
mm.
If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes, it was awesome. It was awesome. Okay, so just out of curiosity, so you work startups, and then, I mean, some major, you know, major government place. I mean, so where communication is, pretty important. What would you say? What communication principle or what that, like, at the end of the day, these things about communication hold true across the board. Doesn't matter if it's startup, doesn't matter if it's, you're deep in an org chart. Make sure this is a priority.
Um, 9 times out of 10, the person you're talking to doesn't care what you're doing. They
Mm.
don't care. They don't care what you're selling. They don't care what's behind. They don't care about the secret sauce. They don't care about the reasons why. They just care about how it affects them.
Yep.
Right? They only care about what's in it for them. That's that value exchange. And if you don't
Yep.
have a really clear picture of your value, and it's not mission, vision, values, it's your value proposition, your value exchange, which
Oof.
needs to be very clear and consistent across most of your communications. You should have a handful of value propositions. When somebody goes, um, what does your product do? Or what do people get out of your product? And you say, well, it depends. Major red flag. You've got to know what you're doing for them. And so, having, again, done the pre work, having it prepared, having it rehearsed, can go a long way. When I was at Homeland Security, they're like, we've got to write these security awareness emails to every. I think we had like 250,000 employees and contractors at that point, and they're like, we've got to do cybersecurity awareness messaging. And I said, what about the the people on the border? What about the TSA agents? These people aren't sitting in front of computers all day long.
Mm,
They're not. We're lucky if they get our email telling them to not click on emails, right? They don't really care. This is not relevant to them. But if we say, hey, we're going to give you some advice that's going to help you at home. It's going to help you protect your family and your kids, and also the mission. That gave them a reason to pay attention.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I also partnered with the group that ran, at the time it was the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Now I think it's the National um, Cyber Awareness Month. I forget what the acronym is. And
Mm,
we partnered with the public awareness messages that their kids and their spouses and their family members were getting from the public awareness and the partnerships with like Intel and things like that, and made our internal communications parallel with that, so that hopefully they were hearing things from their kids, from their spouses, that resonated and echoed what we were giving them internally, and they were getting both sides of it. So understanding that the people that you're talking to have lives outside of this, what we're doing right now, I think is the most major thread through everything.
wow. Wow. You've given us so much gold, so much practical advice. If you could leave us with one, last practical step, turning confusion into connection, something just to remember, what would you leave us with?
Perfection is the enemy of done.
Ooh.
Right. So, especially, I get a lot of people like, we need a new website in 6 weeks. It's got to be perfect. I'm like, let's just work on fixing a little bit of what we've got. Right. You can iterate and you can try things in your messaging. And it costs you almost nothing except maybe a little bit of opportunity. If you get a bright idea and you go and rebuild the website, that's going to cost you a lot of time, a lot of development costs, unless you're doing it yourself. And then that's costing you time. Um, and you're probably going to change the website. I mean, again, the website's not real. It can always be changed, but if you're
Right.
like holding out until everything is perfect, then you're missing opportunities to just try. And so, it's more conversations, test ballooning different messages and just seeing how they work. And then when something lands or you get that gold nugget, then you polish it up and then you put it on the website.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Before I fully let you go, we're building this online resource where our listeners can go and get new ideas around communication. So the first question is there a speaker in your world that every time you hear them, they just click all the boxes, fill you up, you can't wait to tell people about them?
Without a doubt, Guy Kawasaki, who I had the pleasure of interviewing on my podcast, which was a total fluke. I'll tell you that story over drink sometime. But he really is just incredible. He's incredible off the cuff. He's incredible rehearsed. I'm a huge fan of his, and I will watch him anytime he shows up. Guy Kawasaki,
I love it.
formerly of Apple, now of Canva, and I think BMW, and he does a lot of tech evangelism. He was the
Yes.
guy.
Oh, amazing. I love it. Uh, you have your own podcast. If you are a podcast listener, not everyone is, there. Is there a guilty pleasure podcast, true crime, gardening, whatever it is, history, or a development podcast that you just keep going back to that you're like, you gotta check this out at some point?
I'm a big card game geek, obviously. I've invented several card games and I collect them because I use them in my workshop. I really like Wild Card. I wrote it down because I always just remember Wild Card. Wild Card with Rachel Martin. It's an NPR podcast. And what's phenomenal about this is she interviews all types of people, actors, musicians, and the interview is driven by cards that they pick. And so it'll ask you, I think there are like sections, early childhood, existential stuff. And it is amazing the prompts that come out of these cards. Sometimes I listen and pretend that I'm on, maybe I'll be on that podcast someday, but the eye-opening things, it makes you think so much more deeply. And that's where I think um, bringing cards and card facilitation is so powerful. And I love it. Every time I listen to it, I'll listen to a comedian and I'm like, yeah, he's just a crazy comedian. And I'm like, that dude is so deep. Or you'll listen to a great actor interviewed and I'm like, man, there's nothing in there, you know. And it
Yeah.
and the cards are what pull that out. So not that there's nothing
Wow.
in there. That's a mean thing to say. Comedians are deeper than actors, I think.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I know what you're saying. Uh, I love that. And then lastly, is there a book that you would just highly recommend, boy leaders? If you're going to get stuck on a desert island, make sure you bring this book with you.
Oh man, I was gonna say Dale Carnegie, but if you're stuck on a desert island, there's not really anybody else to talk to. So maybe that's not the right one. I've got this one sitting here that I'm revisiting, which is Insanely Simple: The One Obsession That Drives Apple's Success by Ken Segall, um, which I think is just great. Maybe I'm an Apple fanboy, but I just found this really to be a nice sort of an oral history of what really catapulted Apple, and then also the Steve Jobs, Walter Isaacson biography
Mm.
was phenomenal. So keeping on a theme there.
It's interesting. I have like a love slash, I don't know if I could have ever worked for Steve.
Oh,
Same
not
way I love Apple, all that. But I heard a story the other day of somebody who was negotiating, like his whole contract. They were buying, Apple was buying their company. It was already negotiated. Guy came in and he's like, I'm not, Steve Jobs was like, I'm not paying that. And the guy's like, wait, no, we've already agreed. Like this was just the last step. And he's like, well, I guess you'll have to go back, tell your board that your, app is no longer going to work on the iPhone. I'm
but
like,
what did he do? He went back to the board and he took the money,
oh, for sure.
right? Because I know that story. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's just
yeah.
crazy. I'm like, okay, like, mm, yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, Joel, this has been amazing. Like, I love how clear we already talked about, the messaging of your book. I love the resources that you provide, and this was so refreshing. I mean, thank you so much for opening up your brilliance and sharing it with our audience. Could you just tell us where's the best place they can go to find you? Obviously, we'll attach all of your book and everything in the show notes in our Facebook group. But yeah, tell us where we can find you online.
You can find me at nerdthattalksgood.com. It's .com official. I bought the domain. It'll forward over to my company page, Message Specs, and you can find the first chapter of the book for free. Don't even have to sign up for anything. I sell the message deck. You can listen to Nerds That Talk Good, if you're noticing a theme here, on all the platforms. And I'm trying everything. I mean, I'm on the TikToks. I mean, so I'm over there too.
I love it. I love it. Well, it is a phenomenal book. We will make sure it's linked in the show notes in our Facebook group and our weekly communication guide, which listeners, if you haven't signed up for that, go to speakwithpeople.com/resources and get all of those opportunities for you to continue to grow. Again, thank you for being a guest and look forward to connecting in the future.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. It means the world to us when you share this episode. Thanks for liking, subscribing, or following the podcast. That really does help the podcast get into more ears and into more leaders listening. Also, don't forget, we have 2 exciting resources for you. The first is go to Facebook and join the Speakers Group. This is a community designed for leaders who want to grow their communication skills. Also, go to speakwithpeople.com/skills library to access the Communication Skills Library. It is an online resource chock filled with resources that will inspire you and transform you and grow your communication skills. Thanks again for being a part of the listening community. We cannot wait for the next episode.